Services tonight are at 6 p.m. Chag Sameach. Thanks for being patient and letting me spend Pesach with family in Montreal. And I want to thank the volunteers who helped conduct services over the past week, and particularly to Irv Kirschenblatt, our ritual director, and to Chazan Zener, who's been helping out, and I think Morley Goldberg gave the sermon, right, this past Shabbat. So to everybody, really, for helping out, it's appreciated. I don't know what you've all been talking about around the table at your Seders. It's been a very strange Pesach. What is usually a holiday that is filled with hope and joy has been accompanied this year with a lot of fear and worry, anxiety about the world that we're living in, about the future that we're facing. Even though I wish that they would shut down these terrible protests, at least allowing them to happen has revealed the depth of what we're dealing with, has revealed a lot of things that were hidden. What was once whispered, or people's ideas that they once kept to themselves, they now feel very comfortable sharing out in the open. And what was once concern over the number of innocents that are being killed in Gaza has now morphed into from the river to the sea, and the end of the Jewish state, and now kill the Jews, and even some violent incidents that are happening on campus. This is a time of great, great anxiety, and I want to acknowledge what a difficult Pesach it is, and tomorrow what a difficult Yizkor it's going to be. So I hope you'll attend tomorrow, the first Yizkor service since October the 7th, which was the last time we recited Yizkor in the sanctuary, and that you'll tell your friends, who I know might be busy with their own lives, but this is an important Yizkor to attend, an important time to remember, and an important time to stand in solidarity with all of the families in Israel who are reciting Yizkor for the first time, and for a whole country that's in a state of mourning. Tomorrow's attendance and participation, I think, is very, very important. We cannot judge and determine what other people are going to say about us, but I think the least we can do during this time where great hypocrisy has been revealed and stupidity has been revealed, what we can do is at least focus in on the moral clarity that our tradition and that our Torah provides. So maybe that's my job, to make sure that at least within our own community, when we come to synagogue, I can give messages of moral clarity that distinguish clearly between laziness, moral laxity, between giving in to the culture that's surrounding us and standing strong in our heritage and ideals and values. And I think today there's a great, great lesson. This is the 7th day of Pesach, a lesson related to the splitting of the sea, which is what this day commemorates, and a lesson that we can learn that offers us a great deal of moral clarity and defines, I think, in a very nuanced way, in a careful way, what it means to be Jewish, what it means to be a child of Abraham. So let's study some Torah together. A midrash that actually I've taught before, but it's so good and maybe so relevant to our times that I felt like I should teach it again. We read this morning, as I said, of the splitting of the sea, but we've been singing about the splitting of the sea every time we recite Hallel, from the first night of of Pesach, all the way through until today in the Psalm, B'tzeit Yisrael Mimitzrayim. When the Israelites went forth from Egypt, Hayam Ra'ah Vayanos. The sea, Ra'ah is to see, the sea saw something, and Vayanos, it split. Vayanos is a strange word. It actually does not mean split. It means to flee. The sea saw something and it fled. What did it flee from? What did it see? So the Midrash explains. You might remember, if you're a good student of the Bible, that when the Israelites left Egypt, they didn't leave without baggage. They took a lot of stuff with them, not just matzah, but they robbed the Egyptians of many of their items, their precious items. They also took elements of their Jewish heritage. Most importantly, they took a coffin bearing the bones of Joseph. It was raised above them, the casket with Joseph's bones, their great-great-great-grandfather. Anytime they journeyed forward, and it walked alongside the Holy Ark, one on one side, one on the other, the tablets and Joseph's bones. And the Midrash explains that this is what the sea saw. I'll quote for you. Shimon ish Katron, Shimon from the place of Katron, said the following: Bizchus atzmot Yosef, ani korea lahem et hayam, shenemar vayanos hachutza, vaomer hayam ra'ah vayanos. Shimon, the son of Katron, he said, the sea saw the bones of Joseph, and then the sea decided at that point that it would split, or it would flee. So what is this Midrash talking about? Why would the sea see Joseph's bones and then decide to split? And on top of that, how could the sea see, I'm sorry for all of that, Joseph's bones when Joseph's bones were in the casket? I should say the sea saw Joseph's casket, not his bones. So what's the explanation? In the book of Genesis, the story is told of Joseph living in Potiphar's home. And Potiphar had a wife who had her eye on Joseph. You remember the story? She doesn't have a name. Eshet Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, had her eye on him, and she enticed him. That's what the Torah says. And the Talmud actually says a lot, more than what the Torah says, about how much she was into him and what a trial he had to endure. The Talmud says the trial for Joseph was very, very intense. That Potiphar's wife used suggestive language with him, that she would change her clothes multiple times a day to get his attention. And when that didn't work, that she threatened, if you don't sleep with me, I'm going to throw you in jail. And she even said, I'll blind you. And then finally, on the final morning of Joseph's stay in Potiphar's house, she really went after him and grabbed him by his clothing. This is in the Torah, prevailing upon him again, sleep with me. But Joseph resisted. And the words that the Torah uses to explain Joseph's resistance are Vayanos, he split, Vayetze hachutza, and he ran away. Now this is why this midrash is so delicious. Hayam ra'a vayanos. The sea saw Joseph and split. And what Shimon Ish Katron in the midrash says, that word vayanos appears in the story of Potiphar's wife and Joseph. When she went after him, he also vayanos. He split. Joseph had to have tremendous moral a moral view of the world, or a moral constitution. He had to have tremendous inner strength. He was 17 years old. He had every reason to capitulate. He was in a foreign land. He thought his family had abandoned him, sold him to nothing. Nobody cared about what he was doing. He was probably very easy to manipulate. All of the signs of the world that he was living in and of his natural physical constitution would say, give in. Just sleep with her. The laws of nature, you might say, even ordered that he would succumb. And yet he did not. He did not submit. And the Midrash is saying that when the sea saw Joseph's bones, another way of saying that, when the sea remembered Joseph's kishkes, it's not that he saw the casket, the sea saw the casket, it's that it saw and remembered Joseph's bones, who he was on the inside, what he could stand up to, how he was not influenced by the society that he was living in, by the situation that God had placed him in. The sea said, if he can defy the laws of nature and split, I too can defy the laws of nature and split. Isn't that beautiful? The sea saw who Joseph was, saw man's ability to rise above his or her circumstances and defy what everybody expects that you should do, and instead to do the right thing. And the sea said, I can do that too. Leave aside the fact that we're giving a brain to a body of water, but that's what Midrash is. Midrash tries to imagine, through Jewish values, a whole world that runs according to what is right, what God wants from us, that understands the difference between doing what is good and succumbing to the pressures of the world around us. What was it that kept Joseph in line? What was it that enabled Joseph to stay true and faithful and loyal and not give in? What was it that led him to choose what was right instead of what was convenient? So there's a great commentary by a rabbi named Shmuel Bornstein, lived in the 18th century, and wrote a beautiful book called The Shem Mishmuel. 17 years old, like these kids protesting on college campuses around the same age. How do we make sure that our kids don't fall for what is convenient, for what is going on in the society they're living in, and instead have that constitution that Joseph had and that the sea had, to stand firm and to be loyal? So this rabbi said, Joseph may have been abandoned by his family, but he knew who he was. He knew who his grandfather was. He even knew who his great-grandfather was. He knew that he was the great-grandson of Abraham and Sarah, a couple who were very, very, very advanced in age when God said, guess what? You're going to have kids. You're going to have a child. Your that is a defiance of the laws of nature. How can a couple in their 80s and 90s have children anymore? Sarah laughed at the prospect, but the story was told in their family from generation to generation that despite Sarah's laugh, Yitzchak was born unto them, and through Isaac the covenant continued from one generation to the next. He may have known that his family abandoned him, but he did not forget, Joseph, who he was and where he came from. And I think it's a beautiful lesson for us. If our children know their heritage, if they know where they come from, if they know the great trials that previous generations have gone through and have had the strength to withstand, if they knew that once upon a time, not too long ago, our parents and grandparents faced challenges that are much, much worse than this, but they did not give in, and they did not succumb, and they stayed loyal. Just like that's what helped Joseph stay true, I think that's what our children need to hear and need to remember as well. We call this in Hebrew, zechut avot. Zechut avot means the merit of your grandparents and great-grandparents. To remember what they went through puts our challenges in perspective. It doesn't make them easier, but it reminds us of where we come from and that we have within us the very bones that enable us to withstand the societal pressures that want us to become something different and want us to throw our moral constitution aside and want us to go with what is a false narrative and false doctrines that are being taught to our kids, sadly, in our country's most prestigious institutions. As Abraham's legacy empowered Joseph, so should it empower us today. Nothing is predetermined. Nothing. We all have the ability to rise above our reflexes, to rise above fear. We do not have to follow what everybody around us is doing or saying or thinking. And the lesson is that when we exhibit a readiness to breach our own natural barriers, God helps us out and will split the sea for us, just as He did centuries ago. Chag Sameach.